Hello, everyone. How's it going today? I am doing well, thank you. Welcome to episode 34 of We're Here for the Human Experience. I am Lisa, your host and creator of Mind, Body, Spirit Coaching. I'm also a certified life coach, Reiki master teacher, and I help people reframe their limiting beliefs and connect to their inner wisdom, which is huge. I love to listen to my inner wisdom. So today I want to talk about sitting with our emotions. Our emotions are they want to be heard. Our emotions want to be heard. And most of the time, many of us, and I myself have done this, absolutely, we bury our emotions. We don't think about our emotions. We don't want to talk about our emotions. We don't even want to go there because potentially we feel that we may just kind of get lost in that feeling. Sometimes we do, absolutely. Sometimes we definitely do. And it feels like we can never get out. But human beings, we're not like that. We do want to shift out. We do want to know what's going on. We're asking these questions, but we're not listening for the answer. And that is our inner wisdom. That is listening to our emotions. Our emotions are telling us what's going on in our life. So our emotions are no different than a small child. The emotions are you. They're us. And they want to be heard because it's our emotions and we need to acknowledge them. If we're not acknowledging our emotions, then they just keep piling up and it just keeps kind of building up and building up and building up to, where we might have an outburst or many things happen when we pile up our emotions. So our emotions are like a small child. They want to be heard. They want to be acknowledged that there they are. So for myself and for others, when we sit with those emotions, and so for me, what that means, it's sit with your emotions. I can feel things building up. I can feel that things aren't right. I feel maybe, angry, frustrated, feel like crying, tired. All those kinds of things are coming. And so for me, I will sit with the emotions and I ask the questions. What is this trying to tell me? What do I need to know about this? Because I want to be curious I want to help myself. So I want to ask those questions of my emotions. What do I need to know? What do I need to learn from here? Because a lot of those times, those emotions that we keep burying add to the limiting beliefs and add to our emotional struggles and add to our life struggles. And so the more that I can sit with them and ask them questions and be curious and not so reactive, I want to just respond and listen. I'm listening to the inner child telling me what is going on with my emotions. And there again, I'm asking the questions because I want to help myself to transform the limiting beliefs that potentially those emotions are attached to transform them so that I'm not dragging them with me in that whole cloud of emotions and struggles. I want to look at them. I want to go, okay, hello. Let's look at you and let's sit with you and let's ask you a bunch of questions. And in the times, some incredibly profound moments for myself. A couple years ago, I could feel the energy coming up and I could just feel these, I'm not even sure how to describe it. I just knew that there was something, and before, I would just kind of shuffle it off. And then one day it was finally like, okay, yeah, here we come. And so I sat with them and I asked them what was going on and what they needed to, what did I need to learn about it. And it was about self-worth. It was about self-worth. I needed to look at myself. And what happened is that as I'm sitting with these emotions and I'm sitting with these memories that are coming up, it's like, oh yeah, this happened then. And I mean, it took me right back to childhood, in this instance, for self-worth. It took me back to childhood and that gave me that where the root where it started, the self-worth, the lack of boundaries, those things all came up within that. So I was able to go, okay, this is when it first started. And really it was about the boundaries. For myself, it was about, I felt that as a child, my boundaries, I didn't cognize that as a child. When I sat with my emotions 2 years ago, That's when I realized, oh my gosh, these boundaries. There was people in my life, and not blaming, not any of that stuff, but they weren't listening. And I mean, and lots of people do that to children. It's like, no, stop, those kinds of things. It's like, stop doing that. And then now all of a sudden somebody's crying, me. And then it's like, oh, well, oopsie, we're sorry. You know what I mean? And there again, that's typical human behavior, especially for when I grew up. And it was that, well, it's like, well, my boundaries weren't listening. So then that gives me that sense of, well, then I'm obviously not worthy to be listened to. And my boundaries didn't matter. And that stayed with me for a very, 2 years ago, roughly. I mean, you shuffle things out and you assess things and you look at your life. But that was really a pivotal moment for me. You can actually, those words, right? Obviously, I'm worthy. Obviously, I have my boundaries, all of that. But I needed to go back to that moment, when I was that kid, when I felt that my boundaries weren't being listened to. And then that created that self-worth problem. So it just kind of all, and as we're not really looking at our emotions, because we're not taught to look at our emotions, it's kind of like, stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about, per se. Not always, of course. But it's at, well, what is going on? And ultimately it's us. We need to ask ourselves the questions. We need to ask ourselves, what are these, my emotions telling me? What do they want to tell me? Right? They're my emotions, not somebody else's emotions. Yes, they're brought on by the external world, and even my crazy self-talk at times. But it's at what am I bringing? What am I looking at? I want to help myself. And so I want to look at the emotions and I want to respond to them and not like overreact, which has totally happened in the past. So it's at, okay, so now I can see what the emotion was. I can see where it happened when I was a child, especially with that, like the lack of boundaries and not being worthy, not being heard. And so now it's like, okay, I can ask my emotions, what am I feeling and what's going on with them? And the other fascinating thing, one of the other times, I had asked my higher self, my guides, what, looking back at some of my past, and as I look back, I went back to that child, when things happened, right? So as we move back in the past, as we're reviewing our past, and I like to review it, I don't like to relive it, because sometimes, but there again, reliving it also helps with those emotions so that we can release the emotions and understand the emotions and actually effectively transform our life and stop dragging it with us. So what happened is that I felt these emotions coming up this one other time, and it was, my guide said to me, well, you need to look at that situation as an adult, not as a hurt child, not as that person at that time being hurt. And so when I did that, because I have a lot more information now than I did it then, and so it was like, oh, what an interesting concept. Right. I'm going back, reverting back to the 16-year-old, the 20-year-old, the 5-year-old, whatever, when I'm reliving those moments for curiosity, but I'm also reliving them. And then I'm asking myself, well, what is going on? So it was that you're not looking at the situation as an adult, as the information you have now. And that was super profound for me. And it was like, oh, wow, good point. And I mean, it was just that, oh yeah, I can look at it differently. I can look at it differently, of course. And I don't have to be that hurt child because I actually have more inner wisdom and more knowledge. So it was like, oh yeah, okay. If I'm looking back as a child, as that child, then I'm still feeling those emotions as a child. And as the child, I can't actually deal with the emotions because I don't know how to deal with those emotions when I was a child. I do now, though. I do now. So when you're reviewing your past, don't forget that you have all this information now of a ton of information. So it's that, oh yeah, okay, I don't have to look back as that hurt child. Not saying that things weren't hurtful, for sure. Definitely not. But it's that, okay, I can look back in a different light, reframe it, look, in the different perspective, understanding things now with my more information and experience. So, like I said, if things are piling up, it just keeps piling up, and it just keeps dragging, and it just keeps showing, and it just keeps coming out at some point, or in not convenient times or things like that. So we really want to sit with our emotions, especially our heavy emotions that really kind of jam us up. So when we're sitting with them, like, you can feel it coming. I love to set a timer. So, if you have like 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and half an hour, depending on where the emotions are, just start. Your emotions are you, and they want to be heard by you, by us. Like, right? It's our emotions. We're the ones that need to actually listen to them and get to the root of what it is. And I tell you, it also gives more clarity when we're actually being that observer, when we're sitting with our emotions and looking at it through adult eyes, or more information, more experience. So we can totally feel it. We know when something is bothering us. When something is bothering you, just ask, what is actually bothering me? And there's a whole bunch of stuff that potentially comes in, and it's kind of the minutia of things. But in all of that is the actual root of why all this other stuff is gathering around it. Right? It's just kind of like this, we're dragging stuff with us. So we can feel it. We know that something is bothering us. Just ask, what is bothering me? What about this is bothering me? What do I need to know about this? Because it opens up our mind to the answers. If I'm pushing back those emotions, then that's just shutting everything down. And when they say, like, we're sweeping it under the carpet, eventually it becomes a tripping hazard. So take some time for yourself. Your emotions want you to listen. They want you to listen to you, because we expect everybody else to actually understand how we're feeling and doing and moving through life. But we're not actually listening to ourselves. So we really need to listen to our emotions so that we can help ourselves feel better. So our emotions are telling us something. So ask the question, and our emotions are asking us to pay attention. And once we're able to ask ourselves the questions, no different than if I'm sitting with a child and I'm asking them why, or even somebody else, they don't even have to be a child. I'm asking them, what is going on? What are the feelings that you're feeling? What are they? We don't have to judge them. What are the feelings that are happening here? Right? So you want yourself, your whole being wants you to ask those questions. And it gives you that clarity of, oh, okay, that's what it is. Okay, that makes sense. Because once we can actually know what it is, then it's easier to transform it. It's easier to resolve it. It's easier to get to the bottom of it, to let it go, or to reframe it. It's adult eyes. It's our wisdom, our experience. We're here for the human experience. So then let's ask ourselves, what am I feeling and experiencing? Because we do it for everybody else. And we ask other people what they're feeling and what they're experiencing. So it's time that we ask ourselves, what am I feeling? What am I thinking? What is this that's bugging me? So, and it isn't easy. It definitely isn't easy to sit there, because I know you feel like you might just never come out of that, of the heavy emotions. And been there, done that, absolutely. But once I started to ask myself questions, it became a lot easier, and it definitely changes everything, because now I'm not dragging it, as I say. Now I can understand what it is and what happened as to why, and reassess it. And so that it isn't just this heaviness that keeps kind of coming up, and that I'm not really willing to review it. And it is, our whole being wants us to ask questions. Our higher self wants us to ask questions. Source energy wants us to ask questions. Ask yourself the questions. That's part of self-care. Asking, what do you like? What do you don't like, right? So it isn't easy, but once you know what's bugging you, once you know what is bugging you, then it absolutely changes everything. It does. And I mean, and we don't forget things. I mean, we kind of do, but we don't. And it's more just looking at it so that it isn't always so heavy, and it isn't always something that you want to just bury. You've looked at it and you've brought it to the light. It wants to be brought to the light, and it wants you to do it, and it wants you to give it the love and support that it didn't have at that time. But you can now, and it does make a massive difference in your life. So, sit with your emotions. If you want more information, of course, reach out to me. Absolutely. But it does make we're, instead of reacting, we're now responding to ourselves. How do I feel? What is this trying to tell me? Those are the things that help us shift our reality, shift our beliefs, and shift how we feel about ourselves and our life. Anyways, sit with your emotions. Let me know how it goes. Thanks everyone for joining me today. Check out my website, lisahydelifecoach.com, if you want more information. And I will see you again here on October 29th at 3 p.m. for my next episode of We're Here for the Human Experience. Bye everyone. Have a good one.